The spit hit the boy's cheek before anyone could stop it. Malik didn't understand at first. He was 7 years old, barefoot on the warm linoleum because his shoes pinched and his mama was too busy to notice he'd slipped them off. The restaurant smelled like lemon polish and bread rolls and something expensive he couldn't name. His coloring book sat abandoned by the service station where his mama had left him with strict instructions to stay put. But he'd seen the spoon fall, a shiny silver spoon tumbling from the fancy table where the pretty lady in the sparkly dress sat with her husband. Malik knew about helping. His mama always said helping was good, so he'd walked over, quiet as he could, and bent down to pick it up. That's when the lady turned. "Don't touch my husband's champagne," she hissed. Her voice was sharp, like glass breaking. Then she leaned forward and spit, deliberate, aimed, right onto Malik's cheek. The sound was small, wet, the kind of sound that shouldn't exist in a place with white tablecloths and crystal glasses. Malik's hand rose to his face. He tasted copper and something worse. Shame, though he didn't have a word for it yet. "Why did she spit on me?" His voice was too small for the room, but everyone heard it. The clink of champagne glasses stopped. Forks froze midair. The silence stretched tight, the kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat. The lady laughed, sharp and practiced, like she'd done this before and expected nothing but cowering in return. 60 feet away, outside the restaurant's front doors, 20 motorcycles were parking in a neat row. Their engines rumbled low, vibrating through the floor like distant thunder. Chrome caught the streetlights. Help was close. Malik didn't know that yet. He just stood there, spit sliding down his cheek, wondering what he'd done wrong. Tanya heard her son's voice before she saw what happened. She was 29 years old, on her feet for 12 hours already, balancing a tray of dirty dishes that weighed more than her resolve. Single mother. 2 jobs. The double shift tonight meant big tips, and big tips meant Malik and his little sister Keisha kept shoes on their feet and food in their bellies. Her uniform was pressed crisp, but her eyes told the truth. Exhaustion lived there. So did fear. The folded rent notice in her apron pocket, the CPS scare 3 months ago when they'd almost taken Keisha, the caseworker appointment that never happened because the system forgot people like her existed. She'd told Malik to stay by the service station, color in his book. Don't wander. But kids wander. That's what they do. Tanya saw him near table 12, and her stomach dropped. The St. Clairs sat there. She knew the name from the reservation book, knew the husband owned half the billboards in the city, knew the wife had a reputation among the staff for being difficult. Difficult. That was the polite word. She moved toward her son, tray still balanced, trying to get there before. "Children running around," the wife said, loud enough for Tanya to hear. "In a place like this, the service is appalling." Tanya walked faster. The tray wobbled. Then Elena St. Clair leaned over and spit on her son. The tray crashed. Silverware scattered across the floor like broken promises. Tanya's knees buckled, but she forced herself forward, forced herself to reach Malik, to pull him close. His small body was shaking. His hand was still pressed to his cheek. "Why did she spit on me, Mama?" Tanya couldn't answer. Her throat had closed. She wiped his cheek with her apron, her hands trembling so hard she could barely grip the fabric. Elena laughed again. Her husband smirked and checked his phone. The restaurant manager, Gregory, the one who always talked about standards and reputation, stood frozen at his podium. Other diners looked away. All that money, all that power in one room, and not a single person moved to help. Tanya understood, then, with perfect clarity, that this woman had done this before. Maybe not spitting on children, but something. Some small cruelty that reminded people like Tanya where they belonged, and nothing had ever happened. nothing would ever happen. Because people like Elena St. Clair didn't face consequences, they faced dessert menus and complimentary upgrades and polite apologies for any inconvenience. Tanya held her son and waited for the nothing that always came. Outside, the motorcycles finished parking. 20 Harleys in a perfect row, chrome and leather, engines cooling with soft ticking sounds like metal heartbeats. The riders had been on a charity run, funeral escort for a veteran's widow who couldn't afford one. They'd stopped at the Grand Bellamy for coffee because Doc's knee was acting up and Rhea wanted to stretch her legs. That's when they heard the raised voices through the front door. Marcus, Bulk. Hayes was first through the entrance. He was 53, a former EMT turned mechanic, with a weathered face and gray threading through his beard. His hands were rough from engine work, calloused and scarred, but they'd also held dying people steady while ambulances screamed through traffic. He wore a faded wedding ring. His wife had passed 4 years ago. Cancer. He still talked to her sometimes, late at night when the house was too quiet. His eyes read the room in 3 seconds flat. Fancy restaurant, crying child, woman on the floor, holding him, another woman laughing at a table like she'd just told the funniest joke, staff frozen in place, money people looking away. Something cold settled in Bulk's chest, the kind of cold that used to come right before he'd walk into a bad scene. Behind him came Rhea, ex-Navy, 5'4", with the kind of precision that made people nervous. Her hands found her jacket zipper, not a threat, a stance. She was already counting exits, witnesses, variables. Doc Alvarez came next, soft-spoken ex-medic, who still carried a trauma kit in his saddlebag. He had a 7-year-old grandson at home. He looked at the crying boy on the floor and saw Isaiah. He crossed the room in 5 strides. The other diners shrank back as 20 bikers filed in. Leather jackets, tattoos, chrome rings. Bear, the largest of them, 6'6" and gentle as a lamb, positioned himself near the door, shadow, paranoid, watchful, already recording on his phone because he trusted nothing. Preacher, ordained minister, rode with a Bible in his vest pocket. Doc knelt beside the boy. His voice was soft. "You okay, little man?" Malik flinched, then looked up. He saw leather and tattoos and a face that should have been scary. But the eyes were kind. The eyes were worried. About him. "A lady spit on me," Malek whispered. "I don't know why." Doc's jaw tightened. He checked the boy's cheek for marks, for any injury. Found none but the invisible kind. Bulk's knuckles went white. Rhea's eyes narrowed, locking on to Elena St. Clair like a targeting system. "Gentlemen?" The manager, Gregory, finally moved, stepping forward with his hands raised like he could push back a wave. "This is a private matter. If you could please—" "Not anymore." Bulk's voice was low, level, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. 20 bikers formed a loose circle around Tanya and Malik. Not fists, not threats, just presence, a wall of leather and purpose between a mother, her child, and the woman who thought she could spit on a 7-year-old and laugh about it. Elena's laugh died in her throat. Her husband stood, uncertain for the first time tonight. His phone buzzed in his hand, probably his PR team, already sensing trouble. Good. Let them sense it. Tanya looked up at the men surrounding her. She didn't understand yet. These were strangers. Big, scary-looking strangers in leather and chrome. But Malik did something then that broke every adult heart in that circle. He reached up and touched Doc's hand. Tentative, testing, and Doc held on. If you believe that the people who look the scariest sometimes have the biggest hearts, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Biker's Bite and join us. Because protection doesn't always come in uniform, Bulk guided Tanya and Malik toward the service corridor, away from the staring eyes and the clinking glasses and the woman who was still adjusting her diamond bracelet like nothing had happened. The corridor smelled different, grease and industrial soap and the faint burn of overworked coffee machines, real smells, working smells. Tanya relaxed a fraction, even though she was surrounded by men in leather who looked like they'd walked out of a police lineup. The bikers formed a perimeter without being asked. Bear stood at one end of the corridor, his massive frame blocking any view from the restaurant. Shadow positioned himself near the kitchen door, phone still recording. Preacher leaned against the wall, Bible visible in his vest pocket, eyes on the ceiling like he was having a conversation with someone none of them could see. Bulk crouched down to Malik's level first. "Hey, little man. What's your name?" "Malik." The boy's voice was barely a whisper. "Malik James." "Malik. That's a strong name." Bulk's voice stayed low, steady. "You did nothing wrong tonight. You understand that?" Malik nodded, but his eyes said he didn't believe it. Not yet. Bulk stood and turned to Tanya. She was still trembling, arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to hold her body together. "I'm Marcus. People call me Bulk." He gestured to the others. "That's Doc, Rhea, Bear. We're not here to cause you trouble. We just want to help." Tanya's laugh was bitter. "Help? Nobody helps people like me. They make reports and promises, and then they disappear." "I hear that," Bulk said, "but we're not them." Something in his stillness made her believe him. Maybe it was the way he didn't push. Maybe it was the faded wedding ring on his finger, the one that said he knew something about loss. Maybe she was just tired enough to trust a stranger. Whatever it was, Tanya started talking. The story came out in pieces, fragments, like she'd never told anyone the whole thing before, because she hadn't. 2 jobs. The restaurant at night, a cleaning service in the mornings. 12-hour days were normal. 14-hour days were frequent. She slept when the kids slept, ate what they didn't finish, stretched every dollar until it screamed. Malik's father left when the boy was 3. Said he was going to get cigarettes and never came back. Cliché? Sure. But clichés exist because they keep happening to people who don't deserve them. Malik's little sister, Keisha, was 4 years old. She was with a neighbor right now. Miss Lorraine, 72, widowed, watched the kids for free because she remembered what it was like to be young and alone and drowning. 3 months ago, CPS came knocking. The landlord had filed a report, said Tanya was neglecting the children because she couldn't pay rent on time. Neglect. That was the word they used. Like being poor was the same as being cruel. Tanya pulled something from her apron pocket, a slip of paper, crumpled and brown and frayed at the edges. The caseworker's appointment slip, the meeting that was supposed to determine whether she kept her children or lost them. The caseworker never showed. Tanya had waited 3 hours in that government office. Malik in her lap, Keisha crying for a snack, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like dying insects, and nobody came. The case just disappeared into paperwork, into filing cabinets and bureaucratic black holes. "If I make a scene tonight," Tanya said, her voice cracking, "I lose this job. I know how it works. They'll say I was the problem. Disruptive. Unprofessional." She looked at Malik, who was watching her with eyes too old for 7. "If I lose this job, I lose the apartment. And if I lose the apartment—" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Bulk listened without interrupting. His face stayed unreadable, but something was happening behind his eyes, something cold and focused. Rhea's gaze had gone arctic. She'd seen this math before, the impossible equation of survival that poor mothers had to solve every single day, while rich women spit on their children for sport. Doc's hands tightened on his trauma kit. He was thinking about his grandson again, about how different their worlds were, about how unfair that difference was. Bear turned away. His massive frame shook once. He wiped his eye with his palm. Shadow kept recording. Audio only. He knew the legal difference. Malik's voice broke the silence. I was just trying to help. He said it quietly, like he was confessing a crime. The spoon fell. I thought I should pick it up. He looked at Bulk with those two old eyes. Is my mama going to get in trouble because of me? Bulk knelt down again. Eye level, man to boy. No, son. You didn't do anything wrong. Not one thing. You hear me? Malik's lip trembled. Then why did the pretty lady spit on me? The question hung in the air. None of the bikers had an answer that would make sense to a 7-year-old, because there was no answer that made sense. Some people were just cruel. Some people had so much power that cruelty became entertainment. But you couldn't say that to a child. You couldn't explain that the world was full of people who would spit on you just because they could. So Bulk just squeezed Malik's shoulder. I don't know, son, but I know it wasn't your fault, and I know it's not going to end here. Malik nodded, small, uncertain, but holding on. While Tanya talked, Ria worked. She found a busboy near the kitchen door, young kid, maybe 19, with tired eyes and a uniform that had been washed too many times. Name tag said Jerome. You work here long? Ria asked. Her voice was casual. Her eyes were not. 3 years. That woman out there. The one at table 12. This her first time causing problems? Jerome hesitated, looked toward the manager's office, looked back at Ria. I could lose my job. You could. Or you could help a kid who just got spit on for picking up a spoon. Jerome chewed his lip. Then he leaned closer. She's done it before. 2 years ago, a hostess. Elena didn't like how she said, "Good evening." Made a whole scene, got the girl fired. Last year, a valet scratched her car door, didn't even scratch it, just touched it, and she called the police. Said he was trying to steal from her. He got arrested. Charges were dropped, but he lost his job, his whole career. And the hotel? The hotel apologized to her. Both times. Sent flowers. Comped their dinner. Jerome's voice was bitter. Staff who complained got let go. Performance reasons. That's always the reason. Ria's eyes narrowed. She knows she's untouchable. That's the whole point, Jerome said. That's what makes it fun for her. Gregory, the manager, finally found his courage, or at least found his training manual. He approached Bulk with the careful steps of a man walking through a minefield. Sir, I understand there's been an incident. Perhaps we could offer the family a complimentary dessert, or a gift card for their next... Bulk stared at him, just stared, long enough for Gregory's voice to trail off into nothing. The St. Clairs are valued guests, Gregory tried again. They've been coming here for... A woman spit on a child. Ria's voice cut through like a blade. What part of valued does that cover? Gregory's face flickered. For a moment, something human appeared. Something that knew this was wrong. But then it vanished. The math was against him. His daughter's tuition at St. Augustine's, funded partly by donations from Victor St. Clair's Foundation, the hotel's advertising budget, dependent on St. Clair's media company, his quarterly bonus, tied to guest satisfaction from the VIP list. I'm sure we can find a resolution that works for everyone, Gregory said. The words tasted like ash even as he said them. There's already a resolution, Bulk said. That woman apologizes, publicly, to the boy she spit on. I don't think Mrs. St. Clair would be willing to. Then make her willing. Gregory opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the 20 bikers filling his service corridor, looked at his phone, which was already buzzing with messages from the restaurant floor. He turned and walked away without another word. Elena St. Clair was not used to waiting. She rose from table 12, adjusted her wrap, and approached the service corridor like she was greeting staff at one of her charity events. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Her voice was smooth, practiced, a voice for cameras and donors and people she considered beneath her. The boy was touching our table. I was simply reacting to, "You spit on a 7-year-old," Ria said flatly. "There's no misunderstanding." Elena's smile didn't waver. That was the scary part. The smile was still there, still perfect, like this conversation was mildly amusing. Children shouldn't be running around in an establishment like this. Perhaps if his mother had better control over... His mother works 2 jobs to keep him fed. Bulk's voice was low, but it carried. She was doing her job when you decided to assault her son. Assault? Elena laughed, the same sharp laugh from before. Don't be dramatic. It was barely anything. He'll forget it by tomorrow. Behind her, Victor was texting furiously. His face had gone pale. PR team en route. Get us out of here. Damage control. Spin. Containment. We have somewhere to be, Victor said, stepping forward. A charity gala. Very important. If you'll excuse us. No one's stopping you from leaving, Bulk said. But that recording goes live in about 10 minutes. Every local news outlet, every neighborhood forum, every social media platform that'll have it. Victor froze. What recording? Shadow held up his phone. Just a glimpse. Just enough. You can walk out of here like nothing happened, Bulk continued. But by tomorrow morning, everyone in this city will know what your wife did. And they'll know you let her walk away laughing. The St. Clairs exchanged a glance. For the first time all night, Elena's smile flickered. In the corner of the corridor, Tanya was shaking. I can't fight these people, she whispered to Doc. You don't understand. He owns buildings. He knows people. One phone call and my landlord evicts me. One phone call and CPS shows up with a file saying I'm unfit. Her voice broke. They'll take my kids. They'll take Malik and Keisha, and I'll never get them back. Doc didn't have easy words. He'd seen enough of the world to know she wasn't exaggerating. What if you don't fight alone? Tanya looked up at him. What do you mean? I mean there's 20 of us. We're not going anywhere. And we know people too. Lawyers, journalists, community organizers who eat landlords like that for breakfast. Doc put a gentle hand on her shoulder. You're not alone tonight. Whatever happens next, you're not alone. Malik was watching everything. He stood beside Bear, barely reaching the big man's waist, and his eyes moved constantly, from his mother to the bikers, from the bikers to the pretty lady who had spit on him, from the pretty lady to the phone in the man's hand. His cheek still felt wet, even though Doc had wiped it clean. The spit was gone, but the feeling wasn't. He was learning something right now. Every child did, in moments like this. They learned whether shame was permanent, whether cruelty won, whether anyone would stand up when the world pushed them down. Malik didn't know which lesson he was about to learn. He just knew he was watching. Bulk called the riders into a huddle. Options, he said quietly. What do we got? Ria ticked them off. We could walk away, let the system handle it. The system that let a caseworker ghost a single mother for 3 months. The system that'll side with a millionaire's wife over a waitress. Real reliable, that system. Bear rumbled. We could throw a punch. Make it physical. Feels good for about 30 seconds. Then we're all in handcuffs, and that woman's playing victim on the evening news. There's a third option. Doc looked toward Malik. We play the long game. Visibility, pressure, persistence. She expects us to leave or escalate. We do neither. Preacher spoke for the first time. His voice was low and certain. That boy needs to see it doesn't end here. Whatever we do, it's for him, not for us. Bulk nodded slowly. She's got 90 minutes until her charity gala. Her husband's got a PR team on the way. They want this cleaned up and forgotten by sunrise. Then we don't let them clean it up, Ria said. We make it expensive, not with fists, with attention, with witnesses, with the one thing people like that can't stand, being seen. The huddle broke. The decision was made. Bulk walked back to Tanya. Her eyes were red. Malik was pressed against her side. They looked like they were bracing for impact. We're not going to make promises we can't keep. Bulk's voice was low and steady. I'm not going to tell you everything's going to be perfect after tonight. That's not how it works. Tanya nodded. She understood better than most. But we can promise you this. You won't be alone. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. And that woman? She's not walking out of here like nothing happened. Tanya's eyes filled. I can't pay you back. I don't have anything. I can barely keep the lights on. We don't do this for pay. Bulk glanced at the other riders. We do this because somebody did it for us once, a long time ago, when we were the ones who needed help. Rhea stepped forward. Her voice was blunt, but not unkind. We don't pull punches. Fair warning. But we do the right thing, every time. Tanya looked at the leather jackets, and the tattoos, and the rough faces of men and women who looked nothing like saviors. And for the first time all night, she felt something that wasn't fear. She felt hope. Bulk had seen enough chaos in his life to know that winning wasn't about force. It was about timing, position, making the other side realize that the cost of fighting was higher than the cost of folding. He gathered the riders in the service corridor and laid out the plan. 2 moves. First, we secure Malik and Tanya, their safety, their dignity. Nobody touches them, nobody threatens them, nobody makes them feel small. That's the floor. The bikers nodded. They understood floors. They'd built them before. Second, we shift the math. Right now, that woman thinks she can walk out of here laughing. She thinks her money and her connections make her untouchable. We're going to show her that visibility is a weapon too. And we've got 20 witnesses with phones. Rhea cracked her knuckles. What's the timeline? She's got a charity gala in 90 minutes. Her husband's PR team is already spinning. If we let this drag past midnight, they'll bury the story and frame Tanya as the problem. Bulk checked his watch. We've got about an hour to make this too expensive to ignore. Doc pulled Malik aside for a proper examination. The boy sat on an overturned crate, legs dangling, watching Doc's hands move with practiced care. Doc checked his cheek for redness, for any sign of reaction, checked his eyes, his breathing, the steadiness of his small hands. You're healthy as a horse, little man. Doc smiled. Stronger than most grown-ups I know. Malik didn't smile back. Is my mama in trouble? No, your mama's not in trouble. We're making sure of that. What about the pretty lady? Is she in trouble? Doc paused. How do you explain justice to a 7-year-old? How do you tell him that sometimes the people who hurt you never face consequences, and sometimes they do, and you can't always tell which way it'll go? She did something wrong, Doc said finally, and when you do something wrong, there should be consequences. We're trying to make sure that happens. Malik thought about this. Like when I break a rule and Mama takes away my cartoons? Yeah, something like that, but for grown-ups. The boy nodded slowly. It made sense to him. Rules were rules, even for pretty ladies in sparkly dresses. Bear moved through the restaurant quietly. For a man his size, he could be surprisingly invisible when he wanted to be. He stopped at each staff member he passed. A quick word, a folded bill pressed into their palm. For your trouble tonight, pass it on. The tips came from the bikers' pooled cash. $347, collected in under 2 minutes. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to matter. Enough to ensure that when the St. Clairs tried to get Tanya fired for disruption, the staff would remember who actually showed up for them. The busboy Jerome looked at the 20 in his hand. You don't have to. Yeah, we do. Bear's voice was soft. You spoke up. That matters. Remember that. Preacher sat with Malik while the adults strategized. He showed the boy his riding gloves, heavy leather, worn soft with years of use. Malik ran his fingers over the seams, fascinated. These are real motorcycle gloves? Real as they come. Had 'em 12 years now. Do they make you go faster? Preacher chuckled. No, son. They keep my hands safe. Protect what matters. He tapped Malik's chest gently. Just like we're doing for you and your mama tonight. Malik was quiet for a moment. Then, are you a good guy or a bad guy? I try to be a good guy. Don't always succeed, but I try. You look kind of scary. I know. Preacher smiled. That's the point. Sometimes looking scary keeps the real bad guys away. Malik considered this. Then he reached out and touched the Bible in Preacher's vest pocket. Is that real too? The realest thing I own. Rhea had her phone out, fingers moving fast. The neighborhood forum had 2,000 members. Local parents, business owners, people who paid attention. She'd already drafted the post. The audio clip was attached. The still image from Shadow's recording. Elena's face, contorted with contempt, leaning toward a small boy. Malik's question in text. Why did she spit on me? She didn't post it yet. That was leverage, not action. First, they'd give the hotel a chance to do the right thing. How long before you hit send? Bulk asked. Depends on them. 10 minutes, 20. However long it takes them to realize we're not bluffing. And if they call the police? Rhea shrugged. Saturday night, 45 minutes minimum for a response to a non-violent disturbance. By then, the post is live, the journalists are tagged, and Mrs. St. Clair's charity gala is getting very uncomfortable questions. Bulk nodded. The math was on their side, for now. Gregory approached like a man walking to his own execution. Mr. Hayes, I really think we should... The security footage. Bulk's voice was calm, but it didn't invite negotiation. We'd like to see it. Gregory's face went pale. That's not possible. Privacy concerns, hotel policy. I'd need authorization from... A child was assaulted in public view. We have 20 witnesses. The footage either confirms what we saw, or it contradicts it. Bulk stepped closer. Which do you think it does? Gregory swallowed. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Victor's PR team demanding updates. Corporate office asking what the hell was happening. His supervisor warning him that the St. Clairs were valuable clients. Mrs. St. Clair is a... I know what she is. Bulk's eyes didn't waver. I'm asking what you are. Gregory's face crumpled. The mask of professional detachment fell away, and underneath was just a man with a daughter, a man who knew he was on the wrong side of this. I have a daughter, he said quietly. She's 8. Then you know. Gregory nodded. He knew. Elena's heels clicked across the restaurant floor like gunshots. I want these people removed. Her voice was sharp, commanding, the voice of a woman who had never been told no. They're harassing us. This is a private establishment, and they have no right to... Ma'am? Bulk didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. You spit on a 7-year-old boy. We're just standing here. That child shouldn't have been near our table. This is a 5-star establishment. If the management can't control where the help puts their children, and you're a 50-year-old woman who can't behave in one. Rhea's voice cut through Elena's tirade. Cold, precise, the kind of tone that made naval officers flinch. Elena's face twitched, a micro-expression quickly suppressed. She wasn't used to being answered back, wasn't used to people standing their ground. Do you know who my husband is? The question was automatic, a reflex, the weapon she always reached for. I know he's got lawyers on retainer and a PR team on speed dial. Bulk stepped forward. I also know that none of that's going to help when the footage of his wife spitting on a child goes viral. Elena's eyes widened. What footage? Shadow held up his phone. Just a glimpse. Just enough for her to see herself, frozen mid-spit, face twisted with contempt. For the first time all night, Elena St. Clair looked scared. Before we see what happens next, hit that like button if you're rooting for Malik and Tanya. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Your engagement helps us bring these stories to people who need to hear them. Victor stepped forward, smooth, polished, the practiced calm of a man who'd negotiated his way out of tighter spots than this. I'm sure we can resolve this quietly. Gregory, perhaps a private room where we can discuss. We're past private rooms, Mr. St. Clair. Victor's smile tightened. Be careful. I have lawyers who specialize in defamation, harassment, intentional infliction of. I have 20 writers who watched your wife assault a child. Bulk held up his own phone. And a post that goes live in about 8 minutes. Every local news outlet, every neighborhood forum, every social media platform that'll take it. Victor's phone buzzed, then buzzed again. His PR team, panicking. His assistant, warning him that someone had already tagged the charity gala's official account. The dam was starting to crack. This is extortion, Victor said. His voice had lost some of its polish. This is accountability. There's a difference. Bulk stood in the center of the restaurant. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. The room had gone quiet. Every diner was watching. Some had their phones out, recording. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Marcus Hayes. My friends and I stopped here tonight for coffee. We just finished escorting a veteran's widow to her husband's burial. We were tired. We just wanted to sit down. He paused. Let the silence build. What we found instead was a woman spitting on a 7-year-old boy. His crime? He picked up a spoon that fell from her table. He was trying to help. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Uncomfortable shifting. The guilt of witnesses who hadn't intervened. That boy's mother works here, 2 jobs, 12-hour days, just trying to keep her kids fed and her lights on. She's the kind of person this country is supposed to be built for. The kind of person who works harder than anyone and still can't catch a break. Bulk's voice hardened. The woman who spit on her son? She's laughing about it. She thinks her money makes her untouchable. She thinks she can humiliate a child and walk out of here like nothing happened. He looked directly at Elena. She was frozen now. The practiced smile completely gone. We're not here to start trouble. We're not here to throw punches or make threats. We're just here to make sure the right thing gets done. Bulk crossed his arms. We're not leaving until it does. Elena's laugh came out brittle, forced, a defense mechanism that had stopped working. This is ridiculous. The boy was in the way. I barely touched him. You're making a scene over nothing. We have audio. Rhea held up her phone. Want to hear yourself say, "Don't touch my husband's champagne," right before you spit on a child? Elena's face paled. You can't. I can. It's legal in this state to record in public spaces. Want me to play it for the room? Victor! Elena turned to her husband, voice rising toward hysteria. Do something. But Victor was staring at his phone. The notifications were coming faster now. The charity gala's account had posted a statement. Someone had sent them the audio. They were asking questions. She's done this before, Rhea continued, addressing the room now. 2 years ago, she got a hostess fired for not greeting her correctly. Last year, she had a valet arrested. Charges dropped, but he lost his job. There's a pattern. We have witnesses. This is slander. Elena's voice cracked. I'll sue every one of you. For what? Telling the truth? Bulk's voice stayed level. The footage shows what you did. The audio captures what you said. The staff remembers what happened before. You can't sue your way out of the truth, Mrs. St. Clair. Gregory approached Bulk with the look of a man who'd finally made a decision. Please, His voice was quiet. The footage. If I give it to you, I could lose my job. The St. Clairs have connections. They could destroy my career. Bulk looked at him for a long moment. That boy over there could lose his childhood. He nodded toward Malik, who was watching from the service area with Preacher. He's 7 years old. He just learned that pretty ladies can spit on you, and nobody will help. He's going to carry that lesson his whole life unless we change it tonight. Gregory's eyes moved to Malik. The boy's face was confused, hurt, waiting to see what the adults would do. I have a daughter, Gregory said again, softer this time. I know. So, what are you going to tell her tomorrow? That you stood up when it mattered? Or that you let a rich woman walk away after spitting on a kid? Gregory closed his eyes. The battle played out across his face. The mortgage, the tuition, the bonus, against the simple moral math of right and wrong. I'll get you the footage, he said finally. Elena's voice cut across the restaurant. Gregory, don't you dare! Mrs. St. Clair. Gregory turned to face her, and something had changed in his posture. With respect, I have a daughter. She's 8, and I need to be able to look her in the eye tomorrow. He walked toward his office. The St. Clairs didn't follow. The footage was clear. Elena St. Clair, leaning down, her face twisted with contempt. The deliberate motion of her head, the spit arcing through the air, Malik's hand rising to his cheek, his small body flinching. Then the audio, crystal clear, don't touch my husband's champagne. Rhea made a copy. Shadow backed it up to 3 different cloud drives. Bulk watched the video twice, his jaw tight. That's assault, Rhea said. Clear as day. Clear as day, Bulk agreed. Within 5 minutes, the post went live. The neighborhood forum exploded. 400 views in the first 20 minutes, 50 comments, 12 shares. The numbers kept climbing. Disgusting behavior. Is this the same Elena St. Clair from the Children's Hospital Gala? This is who these people really are when nobody's watching. Someone tagged the news. That poor baby. A local journalist was tagged. Angela Chen, human interest reporter. She responded within minutes. Can I get a contact number? This needs coverage. The charity gala's official account posted a statement. We are aware of concerning allegations regarding one of our guests tonight. We are looking into the matter. Someone screenshotted Elena's social media profile. Her latest post, from 3 hours ago, a photo of her preparing for a wonderful evening supporting children in need. The irony was not lost on the internet. The tide was turning. Elena stared at Rhea's phone, watching the comments load. People were calling her names, demanding accountability, tagging every organization she was affiliated with. Her carefully curated public image, the charity boards, the society photos, the magazine profiles, was cracking in real time. Do something. She grabbed Victor's arm. Make it stop. Victor's jaw was tight. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing in 10 minutes. His PR team was in full crisis mode. Recommend immediate public apology, the latest message read. This is going viral. Damage control requires visible accountability. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. Victor looked at his wife, at the woman he'd enabled for 20 years, at the monster his money had created. Elena. His voice was flat. You're going to apologize. I will not. You will. Or I'm walking out that door alone. He held up his phone. The foundation is already distancing. The gala is making statements. Our lawyers are telling me we have no legal ground to stand on. You spit on a child, Elena. On camera. There's no spin that fixes this. For the first time in their marriage, Elena saw something in Victor's eyes that she'd never seen before. He meant it. Victor approached Bulk with the stiff posture of a man swallowing broken glass. What will it take to make this go away? Bulk didn't blink. I don't want it to go away. I want it to change. What does that mean? It means your wife apologizes. Publicly, at that table. He pointed to table 12. In front of everyone. To the boy she spit on and the mother she humiliated. Victor's jaw tightened. Fine, what else? Tanya keeps her job, full employment protection, and a month of paid leave to recover from tonight. I can arrange that with the hotel. The hotel updates its customer conduct policy. Staff have the right to report harassment without fear of retaliation. That gets put in writing. Victor's eye twitched. That's not my decision. Make it your decision. You've got connections. Use them for something good for once. And a donation, $50,000, to a local nonprofit that helps service workers in crisis. We'll give you the name. Victor laughed bitterly. That's extortion. That's accountability. Bulk stepped closer. Your wife spit on a child, a 7-year-old boy whose only crime was trying to be helpful. You want to call paying for that crime extortion? Fine. Call it whatever you want. But this is the cost. And you're gonna pay it. Victor looked at the room full of phones. The comments still loading on Ria's screen. The local journalist who'd just walked through the door with a camera operator. He nodded once. Defeated. Get it done. Elena St. Clair walked to table 12 like a woman walking to the gallows. The restaurant was silent. Every phone was recording. The local journalist had her camera rolling. This moment would live forever on the internet, replayed and screenshotted and shared until Elena's name became a cautionary tale. Malik and Tanya stood by the table. Tanya's arm was wrapped around her son. She was shaking but standing tall. Malik was watching Elena approach with those two old eyes. Elena stopped in front of them. Her hands were trembling. The diamond bracelet caught the light, but nobody was admiring it now. I apologize if my actions caused any distress. No. Bulk's voice cut across the room. Try again. Elena's composure cracked. She'd never had to mean an apology before, never had to face the person she'd hurt without money or lawyers or social position to hide behind. She looked at Malik, really looked at him, saw the tear tracks on his cheeks, the confusion in his eyes. The small scar on his wrist from a bike crash, the bare feet because his shoes pinched. She saw a child, a real child, not an obstacle or an annoyance, a human being she'd deliberately hurt for entertainment. Her voice cracked when she spoke again. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. She swallowed hard. I was wrong. There's no excuse. I'm sorry. It wasn't eloquent, it wasn't polished, but it was real. For maybe the first time in her life, Elena St. Clair had meant the words she said. The restaurant stayed silent. Phones kept recording. Malik looked up at his mother. Is she really sorry, Mama? Tanya squeezed him tight. I think so, baby. I think she finally is. The St. Clairs left through the service entrance. Photographers were already waiting outside the main doors. The charity gala had issued a statement. Elena St. Clair would not be attending tonight's event. Tomorrow, she would be stepping down from the board. Victor didn't look back as he guided his wife into their waiting car. His phone was still buzzing. It would keep buzzing for days. Inside the restaurant, the energy shifted. The tension broke like a fever finally cooling. Gregory shook Bulk's hand. Thank you. I should have done something. When it happened, I should have stepped in. You stepped in now. That matters. Bulk gripped his hand firmly. Next time, you'll step in faster. Next time, I will. The staff surrounded Tanya. Waiters and busboys and hostesses who had watched everything, who had been too scared to speak up while the St. Clairs held power. But the power had shifted now. Jerome the busboy spoke first. You're not getting fired. I don't care what anyone says. If they try to let you go, we all walk. Every single one of us. The other staff members nodded. Murmurs of agreement. Solidarity, forged in witness. Tanya's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. An older waitress, Maria, 30 years at the hotel, put her arm around Tanya. Just let us take care of you for a minute. Doc knelt beside Malik one more time. He pulled a clean paper towel from his kit and gently wiped the boy's cheek. A proper cleaning. Thorough. Careful. There. Good as new. Malik looked at him. Does that mean it didn't happen? Doc paused. He could lie. He could tell the boy that everything was fine now, that the bad thing was erased, that he could forget and move on. But kids deserve the truth, even when it's complicated. No, son. It happened. What that woman did to you was wrong, and it happened. Nothing changes that. Malik's face fell. But something else happened too. Doc put a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. People stood up, strangers who didn't know you, who didn't owe you anything, who could have walked away. They stayed. They fought for you. They made sure it didn't end with you crying on the floor. Malik thought about this. So both things are true? The bad thing and the good thing? Yeah, both things are true. That's how life works sometimes. The bad things happen, but the good things happen too. And tonight, the good things won. Outside, by the motorcycles, Tanya finally broke. She'd been holding it together for hours, the professional mask, the protective mother shield, the survivor mode that got her through every impossible day. But she couldn't hold it anymore. She cried against Ria's leather jacket, deep heaving sobs that came from somewhere below language, all the fear and exhaustion and humiliation and relief pouring out at once. Ria just held her, didn't say anything, didn't try to fix it or explain it away, just let her cry. Bear kept Malik distracted by the bikes. The boy's eyes went wide as he touched the chrome, ran his fingers over the leather seats. These are really yours? Really ours. Bear crouched down to his level. You want to sit on one? Malik looked at his mother, crying against the stranger's jacket, then back at Bear. Is my mama gonna be okay? Yeah, little man. She's gonna be okay. She's just letting go of a lot of heavy stuff. It's good for her. Okay. Malik nodded seriously. Then yes. I want to sit on the motorcycle. Bear lifted him onto the seat of his Harley. Malik grabbed the handlebars, his small hands barely reaching, and for the first time all night, he smiled. The journalist, Angela, arrived with her camera operator. She was professional, but warm. She understood that the family had been through trauma and approached accordingly. Tanya agreed to be interviewed. So did Gregory, who confirmed the incident and took responsibility for the hotel's initial failure to act. Bulk spoke briefly, deferring most questions to the family. We're not the story, he said. That boy is the story. His mother is the story. We just happened to be in the right place. Angela got statements from 3 staff members about Elena's pattern of behavior. She got footage of Malik sitting on Bear's motorcycle, finally smiling. She got the apology video, already circulating online. This will run tomorrow morning, she told Tanya. Front page of the local section. But honestly, it's already everywhere. The internet moves fast. Tanya nodded. She was too exhausted to process what that meant. Will this help other people? She asked. Other workers who get treated like this? Angela smiled. I think it already is. Gregory's phone rang. The hotel chain's corporate office. The executives had seen the posts. They'd watched the apology video. They were issuing a statement. HR review of customer conduct policies. Effective immediately. Staff would have the right to report harassment from guests without fear of retaliation. A donation to a local service workers fund. The Grand Bellamy would be listed among supporters committed to worker dignity. Gregory hung up and looked at Bulk. They're actually doing it. The policy changes. The donation, all of it. Bulk nodded. That's the power of visibility. When people are watching, money has to behave better than it wants to. I never thought I'd see the day. Most people don't, until it happens. Bulk clapped him on the shoulder. You did the right thing tonight, Gregory. Remember how it felt. Do it again next time it matters. Doc's truck smelled like coffee and motor oil and something medicinal, the kind of smell that should have been strange but felt safe instead. Malik sat in the middle of the bench seat, pressed against his mother's side. Tanya had her arm around him, holding on like she might never let go. Through the rear window, the headlights of two motorcycles followed close behind. Rhea and Bear, riding escort. You doing okay, little man? Doc glanced over, his voice soft. Malik nodded. He was clutching something in his hand. Bulk's business card, the one with the motorcycle logo and the phone number and the words Shield Riders Coalition printed in bold black letters. He hadn't let go of it since Bulk pressed it into his palm outside the restaurant. You call that number any time, Bulk had said. Day or night, someone will answer. Malik believed him. The apartment complex was 3 stories of faded brick and metal stairs that clanged when you walked on them. Doc pulled into the lot, and the motorcycles rumbled in behind him. Engines low, 3rd floor, apartment 3C. The door had a wreath that Keisha had made from construction paper and dried pasta. Tanya's key stuck in the lock the way it always did, requiring that special jiggle she'd mastered over 2 years of living here. The door opened, and a small body launched itself at Malik. Did you see the motorcycles? Keisha was 4 years old, all braids and energy and missing front teeth. Miss Lorraine said there were motorcycles. Did you ride one? Did you? Malik held up Bulk's business card like a trophy. I sat on one, a real one, and these are my friends now. Keisha's eyes went wide. She looked past her brother to the leather-clad figures filling the doorway. Bear had to duck to fit through the frame. Those are your friends? Yeah. Malik's voice carried a new kind of pride. They helped us tonight. Miss Lorraine appeared from the kitchen, 72 years old, with silver hair and worry lines etched deep around her eyes. She'd been watching the kids since 8 o'clock, waiting, wondering why Tanya was so late. Child, what happened? I saw the news. Something about that fancy hotel and... She stopped when she saw Tanya's face. The exhaustion, the tear tracks, the way she was holding herself together with nothing but willpower and habit. I'll explain later, Tanya said. Right now, I just need to get the kids to bed. Miss Lorraine nodded. She'd been young and alone once, too. She knew when to ask questions and when to just make tea. The apartment was clean but worn. Cracked linoleum in the kitchen, repaired with duct tape in 2 places, a couch that sagged in the middle, covered with a blanket to hide the patches, drawings taped to the refrigerator, Malik's superheroes, Keisha's rainbows, a family portrait with stick figures, and a sun that took up half the page. The late rent notice was still on the counter. Tanya saw it when she walked in, that familiar twist of anxiety in her stomach. But tonight, somehow, it felt smaller. Like maybe the world wasn't entirely designed to crush people like her. Rhea and Bear moved through the apartment without being asked, checking the locks on the windows, testing the deadbolt on the door, looking at the fire escape with professional eyes. Lock's loose on the bathroom window, Bear said quietly to Rhea. I can fix that tomorrow. Add it to the list. They weren't asking permission, they were just doing what needed to be done. Doc came in last, carrying grocery bags. Picked up a few things on the way, he said, like it was nothing. Like he hadn't just spent his own money stocking a stranger's refrigerator. Milk, bread, eggs, peanut butter, orange juice, cereal, the kind with the cartoon tiger that Malik always begged for at the store, bananas and apples, and a bag of carrots. Nothing fancy, just essentials. Just enough. Tanya watched him put the groceries away, her throat tight. You didn't have to? I know. Doc closed the refrigerator door. Wanted to. Outside, a neighbor had apparently reported the motorcycles. Thought something was wrong. Strange vehicles, strangers in leather, late at night. Bulk handled it, explained the situation. The neighbor listened, nodded, and disappeared back into her apartment. 5 minutes later, she knocked on Tanya's door with a plate of cookies. For the children, she said, and for you. Whatever happened tonight, I'm glad you're home safe. Tanya took the cookies. She didn't have words. She just nodded, and the neighbor seemed to understand. After the kids were in bed, Tanya sat in the kitchen with Rhea. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes when children are finally sleeping, and the chaos of the day has settled into stillness. Tanya wrapped her hands around a cup of tea that Miss Lorraine had made before leaving. I don't understand. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Why did you... She couldn't finish the question. It was too big, too impossible. Rhea leaned back in her chair. Her leather jacket creaked softly. Because we were there. That's it? That's it. Rhea's eyes were steady. We were there. We saw what happened. We could do something about it. So we did. Tanya shook her head. People don't do that. Not for people like me. Some people do. Rhea's voice softened. Just slightly. Not enough, but some. And nobody should be alone when the world spits on them. Nobody. Tanya's eyes filled with tears. She'd been alone for so long, since Malik's father left, since the system turned its back, since every day became a battle just to keep her head above water. I've been alone a long time, she whispered. Rhea reached across the table and put her hand over Tanya's. Not anymore. Before they left, Doc gave Tanya a piece of paper. This is a non-profit, he said. Helps service workers with emergency bills, rent, utilities, medical stuff. My wife used to run it, before she passed. Tanya looked at the paper, looked at Doc. Your wife? Bulk's wife, actually. Cancer took her 4 years ago. But the organization's still going. They helped a lot of people. They can help you. There was more. A pro bono lawyer who specialized in workplace retaliation cases. A community fund that sponsored school supplies for kids in need. Malik and Keisha both qualified. A network of resources that Tanya had never known existed because nobody had ever told her. It's not a miracle, Doc said. Won't fix everything overnight, but it's a bridge. Gets you from here to somewhere better. Tanya clutched the papers like they were made of gold. Thank you. I don't know how to... Don't thank us. Doc smiled, warm and tired. Just answer the phone when we call to check in. That's all we ask. 3 weeks later, Malik walked into school with a new backpack. Well, not new exactly. It was his old backpack, the one with the torn strap that Tanya had sewn back together twice. But now it had something different. A leather patch sewn onto the front pocket. Dark brown and weathered and smelling faintly of motor oil. Bear had given it to him, cut it from his own jacket, a jacket he'd worn for 15 years, through funerals and charity rides and nights when he'd slept on his bike because he had nowhere else to go. This patch has been through a lot, Bear had said, pressing it into Malik's hands. Now it'll go through everything with you. The other kids noticed. What's that? Marcus, from homeroom, asked, pointing at the patch. My friends gave it to me. Malik touched the leather, feeling the rough texture under his fingers. They ride motorcycles. Like a gang? No. Like heroes. Marcus didn't look convinced, but Malik didn't care. He knew what the patch meant. He knew who had given it to him, and that was enough. Tanya was still at the hotel. Gregory had made sure of that. Call it guilt, call it growth, call it whatever you wanted. The man had found his spine that night, and he wasn't letting go of it. She had new protections now. A letter in her file stating that she was a valued employee, a manager who actually responded when staff reported problems, a workplace that was slowly, awkwardly, learning how to treat people like human beings instead of disposable parts. The pro bono lawyer had filed a complaint. HR launched a review. Other staff members started speaking up, stories they'd been holding for years, afraid to tell because they thought nobody would listen. The culture was shifting, slowly, imperfectly, but shifting. And Tanya had enrolled in evening classes, coursework she'd put on hold when Malik was born, business administration, just 2 nights a week, while Miss Lorraine watched the kids. Just a few credits at a time. It would take years to finish. But she was moving forward. For the first time in a long time, she was moving forward. The St. Clair's fall was not quiet. Elena stepped down from the charity committee. To focus on family, the press release said. But everyone knew the real reason. The video had hit 200,000 views. The comment section was a graveyard of her reputation. Victor's name appeared in a follow-up article. Wealthy developers' pattern of influence and intimidation. Anonymous sources from the hotel. Former staff members who'd been too scared to speak until now. A picture emerging of a family that had used money as a weapon for years. Their PR team tried to spin it, issued statements about misunderstandings and heat of the moment and deep regret. But the internet remembered. The internet always remembered. The apology video lived forever online. Elena's cracking voice, her shaking hands. The moment she finally looked at Malik and saw a human being instead of an obstacle. Every time she tried to rebuild her public image, someone shared the video again. Some things couldn't be spun away. Stories like Malik's remind us why we do this. If this touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe that strangers can become family. Subscribe and hit that bell. Every view, every share helps us prove that the scariest looking people sometimes have the biggest hearts. The bikers didn't disappear. Doc checked in every week. Phone calls at first, then visits. Malik started calling him Dr. Motorcycle, and the name stuck. Doc brought medical supplies for Tanya's first aid kit, taught Malik how to bandage a scraped knee, answered Keisha's endless questions about how motorcycles worked. Bear came over with a toolbox and fixed everything that was broken. The loose cabinet door in the kitchen, the bathroom window lock, the wobbly leg on Keisha's bed. He didn't talk much, but he didn't have to. His presence said enough. Ria texted Tanya every few days, short messages. You good? 2 words, simple, consistent, the kind of checking in that didn't demand anything, but showed up anyway. Bulk came to Malik's school. The assembly was about community heroes, firefighters, nurses, volunteers. Malik had asked if Bulk could come. Talk about what the bikers did. Explain why scary-looking people sometimes had the biggest hearts. Bulk said yes, without hesitation. He stood in front of 50 second graders in his leather jacket and his gray beard and his hands that could crush a man's skull, but chose to fix engines instead. He talked about helping people, about standing up when it mattered, about how being tough didn't mean being mean. Malik sat in the front row, beaming. The system shifted too, slowly, reluctantly. But it shifted. The hotel's new customer conduct policy went into effect. Staff could report harassment without fear of retaliation. Anonymous complaints were investigated. Managers were trained to prioritize worker safety over guest satisfaction. The charity fund launched. Funded partly by the St. Clair's mandated donation, a detail that the local news made sure to mention. Service workers could apply for emergency grants, rent assistance, medical bills, the things that kept people trapped in poverty because one crisis could destroy everything. The caseworker, who had ghosted Tanya's appointment, was reassigned. A new caseworker reviewed the file, found no evidence of neglect, and closed the case permanently. CPS would not be coming back. 2 months later, the letter arrived on a Tuesday. Legal letterhead, Victor St. Clair's law firm. Words like defamation and emotional distress, and cease and desist. They wanted the viral posts removed. They were threatening to sue. Tanya's hands shook as she read it. This was what she'd feared all along. The other shoe dropping, the powerful people striking back. Malik walked into the kitchen and saw her face. "Mama, what's wrong?" "Nothing, baby, just some paperwork." But Malik could read her. He'd learned to read adults a long time ago, out of survival. "Is the mean lady coming back?" Tanya didn't know what to say. Malik thought for a moment. Then, with the simple clarity of a 7-year-old, "You should call Mr. Bulk." Bulk read the letter over the phone. His voice stayed calm. "This is a scare tactic. They're not going to file." "How do you know?" "Because if they file, there's discovery. And discovery means all their dirty laundry comes out. The hotel's complicity, Elena's pattern of behavior, all those other staff members who have stories. Victor's lawyers know that. They're bluffing." The pro bono lawyer agreed. "Classic intimidation. They're hoping you'll fold. If you don't, they'll quietly go away." Tanya sat at her kitchen table, the letter in front of her. She could make this stop. Remove the posts. Apologize. Go back to being invisible. But Malik was watching. He was always watching, learning, absorbing lessons about how the world worked and what his mother did when powerful people pushed. What did she want him to learn? "We're not removing anything," Tanya said. The lawyer responded to Victor's firm, cited the truth as an absolute defense against defamation, noted the documented pattern of harassment, mentioned the possibility of countersuing for malicious prosecution. No further communication was received. The St. Clairs had blinked first. A week later, at school, Malik watched a bigger kid knock over a younger girl's lunch. The tray crashed. Milk spilled everywhere. The girl, tiny, maybe 5, with braids like Keisha's, started to cry. The bigger kid laughed. Malik didn't think about it. He just moved, stepped between the bully and the crying girl. Put himself in the space where intimidation lived. "Leave her alone." His voice wasn't loud. He didn't ball his fists or puff up his chest. He just stood there, present, solid, taking up space. The bigger kid looked at him, looked at the other students who had stopped to watch, looked at the teachers who were starting to notice. He walked away without another word. The little girl looked up at Malik like he was a giant, like he was the biggest, bravest person she'd ever seen. "Thank you," she whispered. Malik helped her clean up the spilled milk. He didn't feel like a giant. He just felt like himself, but he understood something now, something Bulk had taught him that night in the restaurant. Presence was power. Standing up was its own kind of strength. You didn't have to throw a punch to be a protector. The community center parking lot had never seen anything like this. 20 motorcycles gleamed in the afternoon sun, chrome catching light and throwing it back like signals. But the bikes weren't alone. Families clustered on the sidewalk. Kids ran between the wheels, laughing. Neighbors who'd heard about the event showed up with folding chairs and coolers and the kind of curiosity that turns into community. A banner stretched across the entrance. "The Shield Ride, protecting those who protect us." The bikers had organized this, a monthly fundraiser, money going straight to an emergency fund for service workers in crisis, the same fund that had helped Tanya catch her breath 3 months ago, the same fund that would help the next family, and the next, and the one after that. Bulk stood at the front of the crowd, microphone in hand. He looked uncomfortable. He'd never liked public speaking, but some things were more important than comfort. "We started this because of a boy," he said, his voice carrying across the lot. "A 7-year-old who picked up a spoon and got spit on for his trouble. A boy who asked a question none of us could answer. Why did she spit on me?" The crowd was silent, listening. We couldn't undo what happened to him, but we could make sure it meant something. We could make sure he knew, and every kid like him knows, that when the world knocks you down, somebody will help you back up. Bulk looked toward the edge of the crowd. "Malik, come on up here, son." Malik walked through the crowd of leather and chrome. His bare feet were gone, replaced by new sneakers, a gift from Doc, who'd noticed the boy's old shoes were held together with tape. His backpack bounced on his back, the leather patch visible to everyone who looked. He was nervous. All these people watching, all these eyes on him. But Bulk was waiting. And Malek trusted Bulk. He reached the front and stood beside the big man, barely reaching his elbow. "This boy," Bulk said, "taught me something, reminded me, really, something I'd forgotten." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small object, a bracelet, rough-cut cedar, handmade, smelling like sawdust and something deeper. Carved into the wood, in simple letters, was one word: shield. "This is for you, Malik." Bulk knelt, so they were eye to eye. "It means we protect each other. It means you're never alone. Wherever you go, whatever happens, you're part of this family now." Malik took the bracelet, turned it over in his hands, ran his fingers across the letters. He tied it on his wrist. It fit perfectly. "Why?" Malik's voice was quiet, but the microphone caught it. "Why do tough men like you help kids like me?" The crowd went still. Someone was recording. Someone was always recording now. Bulk didn't hesitate. "Because being scary is a tool, what we do with it matters." The words hung in the air, simple, true, the kind of line that would echo long after the motorcycles had gone. At the edge of the crowd, Tanya was crying. But these weren't the tears from that night. Not fear, not exhaustion, not the desperate crying of a woman who'd run out of options. These were different. Relief, gratitude, the overwhelming feeling of belonging somewhere after years of being alone. Rhea stood beside her, hand on her shoulder. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Keisha was on Bear's shoulders, waving at her brother like he'd just won an Olympic medal. "That's my brother. That's Malik." Bear just smiled. The biggest man in the crowd, with the gentlest heart. 6 months later. Malik was 8 now, growing fast. The cedar bracelet never left his wrist. He'd worn it so long the wood had darkened with his skin's oils, molded to fit him perfectly. He'd started something at school, called it the Lunch Buddy program. Every day, he looked for the kids eating alone, the ones who didn't have friends yet, or who'd lost them, or who just didn't fit in. He sat with them, asked about their day, made sure they knew someone noticed them. His teacher wrote to Tanya, "Your son is becoming a leader. Not the loud kind, the kind who sees people and makes them feel seen." Tanya kept the note on the refrigerator, next to Bulk's business card and Keisha's drawings. Tanya had finished her first semester, community college, business administration, 2 nights a week while Miss Lorraine watched the kids. It would take years to complete, but she was doing it. She was still at the hotel, but different now. Gregory had promoted her to training coordinator. She taught new staff how to handle difficult guests, how to stand up for themselves, how to recognize when a situation was crossing lines. The late rent notices were gone. The apartment felt like home. Keisha was 5 now. She rode on Bear's shoulders at every shield ride, calling the bikers the motorcycle uncles. She'd drawn a picture that hung in Doc's garage, 20 motorcycles with hearts floating above them. When people asked about her family, she said she had a mama, a brother, and 20 uncles who rode motorcycles. Nobody corrected her. The bikers hadn't stopped. The Shield ride had expanded. 3 other cities now, chapters forming, funds growing, families being helped. Doc started a mentorship program for kids in the foster system. Rhea taught a self-defense class for domestic abuse survivors. Preacher led a weekly support group for veterans struggling to adjust. Bulk spoke at schools, stood in front of classrooms full of kids who looked at him with wide eyes, expecting a scary story, and got something else instead. Protection isn't about being the biggest or the strongest, he'd tell them. It's about showing up. It's about standing in the space where someone needs you. It's about using whatever tools you have, even if that tool is just being present. The kids listened. Some of them remembered. The ripple kept spreading. The hotel's new policy had been adopted by 2 other chains: staff protections, harassment reporting, the acknowledgement that workers were human beings who deserved dignity. A local news outlet ran a follow-up piece: how 20 bikers changed a city's approach to worker dignity. It went regional, then national. Other organizations reached out, wanting to replicate the model. Elena St. Clair's name had become a cautionary tale, a verb, almost. When someone acted entitled, when someone treated service workers like dirt, people would say, "Don't be an Elena." It wasn't justice, exactly, but it was consequence. And sometimes consequence was enough. The night ride. Saturday night, 6 months after the spit, 20 motorcycles idled outside Tanya's apartment, engines rumbling low. Chrome caught the streetlights. Leather creaked as riders shifted in their seats. Malik waved from the window, his cedar bracelet catching the light. Keisha pressed her face against the glass beside him, fogging it with her breath. Tanya stood behind them, arms wrapped around herself, watching. The bikers pulled away slowly, engines low, lights dimmed. They rumbled through the neighborhood, not racing anywhere, just present, patrolling, watching. Windows lit up as neighbors heard them, but it wasn't fear that made people look. It was recognition, safety, the knowledge that someone was keeping an eye on things. The rumble of a motorcycle can mean a lot of things: danger, power, trouble on the way. For years, that's what most people thought when they heard those engines approaching. Something to fear, something to avoid. But for one 7-year-old boy, 8 now, growing fast, it meant something else. It meant someone was watching, someone cared, help was close. What happened in that restaurant was small and ugly, a moment of cruelty that could have been forgotten by morning. A rich woman spitting on a poor child, expecting nothing but silence and submission. But 20 strangers refused to forget. They stood in the breach. They kept their promise. They showed up when the world said nobody would. And a child learned that shame doesn't have to be permanent, that when you fall, someone might catch you, even if they're covered in leather, and look like they eat trouble for breakfast. Thank you for riding with us today. If you believe that sometimes the scariest-looking people have the biggest hearts, subscribe to Biker's Bite. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done? And remember, the rumble you hear, it might not be trouble. It might be help on the way. The engines faded into the night. The streetlights flickered. The neighborhood settled back into quiet. At the window, Malek pressed his hand against the glass, the cedar bracelet warm against his skin. "They said they'd come back," he whispered, "and they always do."